partners. So it's a great opportunity to have your landlord help you weigh in on, at least to some extent, some improvements that can happen ultimately all in the best interest of kids and of learning. So I'd like to introduce Dion Harrington. Dion is going to be spearheading this project from the school district, and he has many years of experience in this. Some of you may recognize him from the first iteration of these meetings already, I don't know how long ago. 3.5 years ago. Yeah. When we came up with some conceptual drawings and had some really good input from the community. So without further ado, Dion, take it away.
Good evening, everybody. I want to thank everybody for coming out this evening. Apologize for being a few minutes late. It took me almost an hour to get here from Kearney Mesa. So one of the things that I want to do first is I want to introduce our architectural team. About 3.5 years ago, when we did the site master planning for this project, we had a different architectural team involved at that point in time that came up with a site master plan based on the input from the people that attended those meetings. And since then, some time has passed, and we've introduced a new architectural team to this particular project, who have reviewed the master plan that was done previously and come up with some interesting ideas to help improve that master plan. So with that, I'm going to introduce Kevin Potter, who's with AVRP, Randy Robbins, principal with AVRP, and David Thompson, who's an architect with AVRP. I'm going to go through some items on the agenda, and then I'm going to turn it over to Randy, David, and Kevin to conduct the presentation of what we've been going through over the past few months. So the purpose of the design task force process is the next stage in design for a whole site modernization for a school site. So this particular process will involve getting more into the details of floor plan layouts of the buildings, what the exterior of the buildings are going to look like, when they're completed, what the site's going to look like overall, once it's done as well. The previous phase that we did about 3 to 3.5 years ago was planning out where we want to do buildings on the site and how the site may look once it's done. Now we're starting to get into more of the detail. The design task force process, usually we have about 3 of these meetings during the design task force process. The meeting tonight will be to go over a little bit of what the prior master planning work did, basically kind of give you an update of the master plan that was generated, and then what we've come up with some, not alternative ideas, but revised ideas based on what that original master plan, how it was developed. And then what we'll do is we'll take some input from the audience, take notes from that input. That's what the large tablet is up here for. And then our architect team will take that back and start utilizing that information in coming up with the floor plan layouts, designs, some exterior design concepts for the buildings, which we will then present at the next meeting. And then finally, once we get input from the next meeting that takes place, then what we'll end up doing is trying to finalize and hone in on the exterior elevations of the building, the layouts of the buildings, and those types of things, and bring those back and present them at a third design task force meeting. Meeting structure, schedule. This evening's meeting, I think Kathy has passed out some agendas. So the schedule right now is we're doing this first meeting this month being February. Then we're going to work with the architects a little bit. Our plan is to have, at this point in time, another meeting in late April, and then a third meeting in May. I would like to update everybody that from 3 years ago, when we did the master planning on this project. The project wasn't originally supposed to go forward into the design phase until 2021. However, what has happened is that the district has been able to sell the bonds to afford the funding to bring in the funding to allow this project to go basically 2 years earlier. So we're starting on this design phase two years earlier than what we were originally expected to do, which would move up the construction phase, start of construction approximately 2 years earlier as well. Project timelines, I kind of just talked about that. You know, once we get through these design task force meetings, our architect team is going to go into, design task force usually takes place during the time, or the period in the design process that we call schematic design, when you're coming up with the early designs. And then they'll go into design development, which goes into even more detail. And then we go into what we call construction documents, which is the actual detailed documents that the contractors that bid on the project are going to build from. And for a project like this, we're probably going to have 2 volumes worth of large sheets of plans. Some of them do it electronically now, but most contractors still have large plans in their trailers. They're going to be probably 1.5 to 2 inches thick, plus specification books. So that's the timeline, and usually that process can take anywhere from 12 to 16 months to get through that schematic design through construction documents. Then what we'll do is we'll submit the project to the Division of State Architect, the local office, which is here in Rancho Bernardo. We've already had a preliminary meeting with the Division of State Architects so that they know, they've given our architect team some information, and they know that this project is going to be coming in the future. DSA review and approval, depending on how complicated the project is, can be right now, and depending on how busy they are, somewhere between 6 and 9 months. The bid process usually takes about 3 months, and then we'll be into construction. So we're looking at about a 2-year process from essentially now, or I would say next month, being March, until we get into construction. And we'll be working with the school leadership, David and Greta, all throughout that process. And they can provide updates to the parents in the community as we move forward, and or we can also do some periodic update meetings or do a meeting prior to the start of construction. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our architectural team, AVRP, and let them go ahead and go through the presentation, and then following the presentation, we'll begin some discussion and get some input from the audience here. Thank you very much.
Okay, so real quick, we wanted to thank you for getting us here, and we really appreciated working with Keon and the powers to be at the school here. One great thing is we're right down the block, so it took us 7 minutes to get here. So we'll always be available to meet, to talk. If everybody wants to get together, we're available. So David and Kevin are going to do a presentation. I think Kevin's going to start. So and any questions, please ask us, and we're just here to facilitate your desires and show you where we are on the project. So thank you. Kevin, want to go ahead?
Yeah. So I'm just going to start off with the existing site right now. As you can see, we have the existing 2-story classroom building from 57. We have this building, administration, multi-purpose, and academic support from 75.
1975.
1975, yes. Then we have, as you can see, one of the major things to address, all the portable classrooms, the need for permanent classrooms. We have our site hard surfaces, our site play fields, and we have an adjacent lot, currently not really Yeah, so that's 20 classroom buildings and support restrooms. So the major plan considerations are, you know, the existing buildings are a bit older. The temporary buildings need more permanent facilities. Library is undersized. Currently, it resides in the teacher lounge. What's that? Can you guys not hear?
No, we're in the club.
Oh, okay. Oh, you guys are teachers.
She's the librarian.
Okay, I got you. And then we have a lunch court shelter. It projects a lot of sound with the kids. And then there's no on-site parking for teacher staff. And drop-off and pickup is a bit hectic. So we'll launch into the 2015 site master plan that Dion discussed. In the plan, oops, wrong button. It shows the two-story class, the existing facilities. We have a new classroom building. Between the two, it has a learning courtyard. We have a separate kindergarten building with adjacent kindergarten classes, and a two-story building with a kinder court for separate outdoor use for the kindergarten. And then we have on the prominent side, Fern and Ash, the new library. And throughout the site, the updated fields, which were artificial turf, hardscape, the hard courts. Here's the 60 surface facility parking, and then throughout the site we have like educational garden spaces, and the updated lunch shelter.
Can you talk about the existing pine trees, the Tory pines that are in the lower right-hand corner of that little appendix that kind of sticking out there in Gale Street?
So this area right here.
Correct.
Well, at this point, we're starting about talking about where we think we're going. That what's going to happen is almost immediately as the start of our design contract, we'll do a very comprehensive survey which will locate every tree, every improvement that's on the site. Any tree that has a caliper over 4 inches, so 4 inches in thickness, will be individually identified and located. And any trees that need to be preserved will be identified as part by the arborist on our landscape team. So at this point in the master plan, we haven't really addressed that particular item yet, but that will be part of the review.
Okay. Do you have a sense of what is going to happen to those trees according to your plans?
You're
going to survey them.
Yeah, well, candidly, you're the first person that's mentioned them to us. Tory pines obviously causes me to perk my ears up a little bit. Can you give me a little bit of an idea of where they're sitting in that particular part of the site? Are they permanently in the middle of it, or are they?
There's one here, there's one here, and they have a canopy that covers here.
Okay. All right, so I think that's a good observation that we definitely want to record. Kind of our direction at this point, which Ken will get into in a minute, is that the school would like to try to level out a portion of that site for campus use. So obviously that's something that we want to take into consideration in terms of those locations, because if they're there, we don't want to regrade that and cause any problems with it. So we'll put it on our list of things that we want to observe and take into consideration as part of the ongoing design.
I understand. And then what is scheduled for this area here?
So we'll talk. It's like right now we're just kind of showing it as open play area, play field.
Let me jump in.
Yeah.
One of the instructions, one of the requests from the school is they would like to develop as much of that space for active use as possible for the school itself. So part of surveying that is looking at the realities of the topographic condition in that area and what we can do with it. So again, we appreciate you bringing that item to our attention so that we can consider that. One of the tasks is to make suggestions in terms of how we can develop that site for more active use.
Got it. The main reason why I'm looking
further
at
into
this
the
site is that my house is here, my dining window is here, our view is here. If you put a window, a big building here,
We're not talking about a building
No
structure.
planned
No building.
buildings. And you'll see as we get a little further into the presentation, how things develop through the site as far as revisions, but there are no planned buildings for
Yeah,
this.
we're talking about open activity area.
Play space.
yeah, I'm actually one of the few people in this whole world that actually shares a property line with the school.
All right, go ahead,
All right,
Kevin.
and, yeah, thank you for your comments. Some of the other observations that were made, looking at this site master plan, the existing one, were, the potential cost impacts for adding to the multipurpose space in this way. As you can see, the roof pitches down, it's not really configured for an expansion out, the roof just would keep diving. Another issue, was, the existing servery, kitchen servery, opportunity to expand it, update the facilities. And then, how these things are gonna be phased, how the buildings are gonna come online, and we wanna minimize the impact to the site itself. So, this is the updated plan. And, as I mentioned, the multi-purpose space has been shifted down to, A in Fern. This will become the library space. And then there's renovations to this existing admin building.
If I could talk.
Yeah, go for it.
Sorry to interrupt, Kevin, about the multi-purpose spaces, the idea of moving that to the corner as opposed to the library is that, there's more than adequate space for the library in here. We can remodel this space without extreme expense. That corner gives us an opportunity to build a space that's high ceiling in it. And in reality, what we're looking at is being able to put a basketball court in that space. So there could actually be an indoor play area in terms of inclement weather. So it would also be a nice prominent building at that corner. Now, the library wouldn't be a nice building to put in the corner, but we also thought that was good at that location. Plus, it would also be a good spot, because of the prominent corridor for, public entrance, at that corner, for meetings, for public meetings. Sorry, Kevin.
Yeah, no problem. No, just jump in whenever. So, and then we're proposing a new lunch, shelter. Currently, it's, you gotta choose to walk out there. It's a series of domes, and it projects sound down. We're looking at a shape that will dissipate some of that sound in the court, and, a little bit taller, raised up, so it doesn't catch all that sound. As we discussed earlier, open, play field areas, no structures here. It's bridged with the upper play field by, a walkway and, a ramp and stairs. I think I discussed that a little bit. We have some of our, teaching gardens and different landscape areas. And then we bridge, these, elevation changes with, newer ramps. I think I skipped over the kindergarten building is here. We have similar to the other plan, a kindergarten court. We have 2 additional kindergarten classrooms to make a total of 6 onto this kinder space. And then we have that new classroom building, and then they have a learning courtyard, which is shared between the existing and the new 2-story classroom building.
Couple other things.
All right, go
I want to
for it.
flip back to that. Couple other things we're looking at also as part of the updated master plan is a couple of pull-out drop-off areas
Oh, yeah, thank you.
along Fern Street, which would allow drop-off and direct access to the kinder courtyard area, as well as drop-off and direct access to the, in between the 2-story buildings or 2-story classroom buildings.
Oh, okay.
And a drop-off area which still requires some working through with the city of San Diego, because it is in, what you'll see is the term, the city of San Diego right-of-way, along Ash Street. So this updated revised master plan provides the on-site parking for staff, just like the prior master it's just reorienting the buildings a little bit. As Kevin said, moving the multipurpose out to the corner and making it bigger. And then putting the library in this particular facility, as well as moving, the proposed idea is to move the food service from where it's located now towards the back of the building, so it will serve exterior. So the kids would not have to come inside the building. They could actually get served outside, whether it be towards the play fields and or towards the lunch court shelter. One of the main reasons, with that, yeah, there would be outdoor coverage. There would be awnings or overhangs for coverage.
We would actually have a little step in, because you just order to serve food, you don't want to serve it out directly out of the window, you'd have to serve a screen. So you would actually, we'd have a little vestibule where you come in and go directly out, but it would be directly from the food court in and out. And
We'll show it a little in a minute, but it's right here.
Yeah, and one of the other main considerations for not expanding this building is, one, cost, but two, you've got some major utilities that feed into this building, which is what they call the main distribution frame, which is your data hub for the entire campus, feeds into the back of this building, and then goes from here out. To relocate that main distribution frame to a different building is quite costly. So that was another reason for taking a relook at moving the multipurpose out to the corner of Fern and A Street. So go ahead, Kevin.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go for it.
Maybe it's fascinating, but with all of the new buildings that we're doing, I assume they'll be ADA compliant. One of the problems we've had with the existing campus is there's a lot of things on campus that have not been ADA compliant because they were built so long ago.
Mm-hmm.
So on the older buildings, will they be getting kind of updated and upgraded for ADA compliance too, or are we just doing that on all of the new things that we're adding?
The master plan does anticipate fully upgrading all of the existing buildings. What we have to look at is how far the initial budget takes us. We want to try to get as much bang for the buck out of that as we can. But everything you're seeing here, both internally and externally, is intended to not only just meet the requirements of ADA, but actually kind of integrate it so that it's kind of a universal design. So you're not making disabled people go around the back door. Everybody kind of travels in the same path.
And yeah, we have a lot of site grants and rework of site pathways to connect both.
This is a very interesting site from the topographic standpoint.
Yes.
Right.
Steps down.
Okay, so I'll talk about the phasing a little bit. The way we see the first phasing occurring is we want to attack this whole area right at the beginning. So that will we'll need to relocate temporary classrooms with some outdoor hardscape for that area. So then that allows us, like I mentioned, to just take off this whole piece. We're pushing to get as much new construction up front. Then we'd also be addressing the existing elevator tower, because we have the new classroom building that will come online, and they'll need to share the elevator.
One of the advantages for doing this collectively is that a couple of the advantages is one is we're moving the construction up for the bulk of the work in the early part of the project. So we're spending the most part of the money early. So we're actually saving money because we don't lose it to inflation building it later in the project. The second thing is that the original plan called for phasing it with a piece in the corner and then doing a construction in between the existing classroom and the new library, when it was the new library, which didn't make sense to us because it would be disruptive to both the library and the other and the existing classroom. So by building this big chunk, all we're doing is annoying the existing classroom for that short duration. And once that's done, then it's a little bit more peaceful site.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's probably about an 18-month process to get those buildings built.
Yeah.
And actually, they'll go much more quickly, because rather than building them one at a time, we're building 3 together.
I would say 18 to 24 months.
All right, we'll just jump.
Where does it keep playing? Everything's on the slide.
Okay, so the play area is still there, you want to circle the play area there, Kevin, so it is restricted, and already the play area on the site is restricted. So no,
Oh, there's no kinder court right
so
here.
the play area here, so we'll have this area to
existing
play.
area. Okay, right.
And then the kindergartners will have this area in between, there to play as well.
Yeah, if I jump back, so it's the high area, on the campus, that'll be fenced off, and these facilities will be still accessible by the existing ramp here and, you know, all the stairs. So you can still function on the campus here. Okay, go ahead.
Just to talk a little bit about the specific improvements that we're doing here with regard to the new multi-purpose building, one of the features that we want to put into that building is a small serving kitchen. So again, in the event of inclement weather or during construction, they can serve the packaged lunches out of that location as well. So that covers that, and we'll have restrooms in that, so it'll be an autonomous facility. And then, as Dion mentioned earlier, one of the things that we attempted to do in this design is to actually open up an entrance into the kinder court off of Fern Street, so that kindergartners can be dropped off and then dropped directly into the kinder court without having to come through the main entrance and then wandering up through the campus. And then you'll see in the next phase, we also have another entrance above. So we have multiple entrances up to the time when the school closes, or the gates, secure gates close at the start of the day. So that everybody can be approaching the campus from multiple angles until that, and then once it's locked down, then the only entrance will be over here off of Ash.
Okay, and then we have the new elevator with sort of a bridge structure that ties the two buildings together, and then site ramps here that now tie to the existing play area. Next, we launch into phase 2, and this is a phase that'll occur during the summer. There's certain uses that need to stay functional during the school year, admin being one of them, and then we discussed a little bit of the kitchen servery area, so that'll be done over the summer, and the new lunch court shelter, because this is, you know, right in the middle of everything, so it needs to stay active during the school.
Because the administration is really the hub for security during the school year, and we want to try to keep that active, so that's going to be kind of a summer project on steroids. So from the time the kids leave in early June to the time they come back in late September, all the work within this room, this area here, over in the admin will be done, so that those will be back online and ready to go when the school year starts.
It's what we call a summer sprint. We did one on another school this past summer, an elementary school, where it was planned out basically a year in advance, approximately, to go in and completely remodel an entire classroom building over the summer break. And the contractor got it done, and the major priority is always kids in seats. There were items that didn't get done, but we got the classrooms completed, air conditioning was put into the classrooms because these particular rooms didn't have any air conditioning. So it was basically gut the classrooms and start from scratch. And so that's what we would be looking at doing on the reconfiguration of the administration as well as this space during that summer.
And then, so that's all back online, you see continuity down to the lower section, and then we have the drop off here for continuity.
One of the things we do need to develop off of Ash Street is a wheelchair accessible drop off at the school entrance. And there are very specific requirements for that. So we have to deal with both DSA, which is very rigorous about that, and then we also have to deal, as Dion mentioned earlier, with the city engineer. And it's probably going to be some sort of a non-standard condition because we have a non-standard situation.
Okay, and this is just second story China lunch shelter. So phase 2B improvement are the rest of the renovations in this existing building, and then renovations in the existing two-story classroom building, along with the learning court between the existing classroom building, the new classroom building, and the additional drop-off and pickup area here. And something I didn't mention earlier, but as the phases move through, we do the landscaping and the site security as the phases march through.
And our intention is as we go around A Street, around Ash Street, the main entrance, is that most of the elements along here will be decorative fences that will occur between buildings. So you'll have the face of the wall and a decorative fence, so you're not looking at chain link in that area as it wraps its way around. And then the only place we'll be doing chain link is really kind of the backside of the activity areas and around where the future parking lot will be. So again, we're trying to be sensitive to the appearance of the neighborhood. We're also trying not to spend a lot of money with a lot of decorative fence. So we're using the opportunities of building between structures with nice fencing.
Okay, and then 2B, the renovation to
Second level?
the second level here, right, the academic support and existing classrooms.
So the functions in both the existing classroom and the remaining functions of this building will pretty much the same. So our objective will be to bring things up to date in terms of security, access, paint, carpet, and ceilings.
Fire alarm, PA system, those kinds of.
Right.
And so we'll have the admin online, and the food service will be online, food court will be, the lunch court, shelter will be up and usable, and 2B can be done throughout the school year. They can section off the part of the building.
And another thing we'll be doing is we'll be adding sprinklers to both this and the existing classroom building. The new buildings will be fully sprinkled as well. So again, it's a safety feature that is nice, and it also helps bring the existing buildings up to current code.
Okay, then we are going to attack the rest of it. The site, we're going to get rid of the portables, get rid of the relocated portables, and then the existing play area.
Now, this may be the most painful time
Yes.
of the project for the school, because we'll be limiting play area that's available. The reality is it's going to be really hard to try to section off little bits and pieces for that to do, so it's better to just get the paint over with, pull the Band-Aid off, do it all at once. But again, the advantage that we've left is with the new multi-purpose building, having that be a large enough space that it's technically a gymnasium. So I think with a little bit of careful scheduling, I think that the school could probably take care of the physical education needs without having to go off-site.
And
How long will this take? Yeah.
well, we're very early in the process right now. What I was going to interject on what Dave and Kevin were talking about is, depending on where this phase, being the demolition phase and field and parking lot phase, falls within the overall project. If it falls to where it's going to happen during a summer, that would be ideal, because then we can at least get the demolition done during the summer, we can get the grading done during the summer, maybe some of the field work done during the summer to open up for students during the school year, and then at least open some of the field play space, and then we can focus more on like parking lot and the remaining portions of the field after the school year starts, to try to finish up that phase of the work. But it's going to be a teamwork approach with the contractor to figure out that scheduling and seeing how that phasing falls into place with where we are in the school year.
So, here are the renovations. We have the play fields. We have a bit of a retaining wall to try to maximize the play field area with a artificial turf, and then the lower play field area that we discussed.
And again, going back to your question about the development of that site, at this moment, we just have some objectives, and so we're have to see what we can do based upon what the existing conditions give us the opportunity to do.
And then we have the security fencing will come in, hardscape surfaces, an additional ramp, and accessible parking here, tying all that together, and the existing parking. And here, right away.
Point that out again, possibly.
Oh, what's that? The accessible?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about.
So the entire red area is staff parking, and there may be a few or a couple visitor parking spaces in there, as well as some handicap accessible parking spaces there.
Right.
And so there will be direct access from that level where the parking is onto the hardcourt areas, and then there's two ramps, one he's pointing to now, that go up to the main level campus. That way you have what they call an accessible path of travel, which is a requirement by DSA, and it's actually a requirement by the California Building Code throughout the campus.
That will not be used as a drop-off
No.
location, right?
No, it's not drop off.
Now, since you mentioned the drop-off, we know that there's interest in trying to improve the drop-off and pickup conditions. And our challenge is with that, again, going back to the whole accessibility ADA access requirement is that in general, the objective is to not make disabled people go to someplace that's remote, so you want to integrate it as much as possible. And our challenge on Ash Street is the slope exceeds what's called the 2% cross slope. So if you drop somebody off on their wheelchair and they're trying to roll towards the curb, the slope in this structure is exceeding 2%. So because it's on the street, it's impossible to level that up without creating a lot of warps and irregularities for people when they drive by, that they kind of go up and down. So what we're orienting our attempt at this point, and would like your comments on, is actually is doing drop-off along Fern Street, where we've got these two cutouts up here. Now, the cutouts actually aren't for driving into and dropping off. You actually pull up, and the code requires the wheelchairs to be able to offload onto the street level and then go up a curb ramp onto the sidewalk. But effectively, we're looking at Fern Street for vehicle drop-off. We're looking at the drop-off down at the entrance down here off of A Street here for buses, and then we're just looking at Ash Street for a drop-off location immediately in front of the entrance. We still have some challenges working with accessible parking spaces. There are a couple that are marked on the street right now. The reality is that they don't fully conform with the requirements of the code, again, because of the cross-slope issue, because of the angle, because of their size. We have to work very closely with the city of San Diego to try to resolve what we can there. We know that the city is probably not going to want to give up parking spaces along that length, and maybe you as the neighbors don't want to do that either. So the solution to that right now is not completely clear, but it is something we have to work on. Yes, sir.
The red zone parking there, does that accommodate all staff and teachers?
It provides 60 parking spaces. Now, I don't know what David Gred's demand is at this point.
Accommodate everybody, but accommodate 60 more people than.
That we currently accommodate.
Well, yeah, I mean, always on the issue of parking. From the neighborhood perspective.
So that, we're at the point of questions, so please go ahead.
I mean, I know parking
Oh,
garages
okay.
cost a lot, but if we let the parking garage there and had, yeah, you're laughing, I know it costs a lot.
Any idea, I mean, we certainly want to write it down.
Right.
But
Neighbors have issue with everything, but we're also like, the PE teacher and I were like, I teach outdoor education here, and we're all very concerned about maintaining as much outdoor space as possible, and if there's a way that we can decrease the amount of parking spots, and I know that City of San Diego is on a new trend to decrease the required amount of spots if you're on mass transit. I don't know if buses fall underneath their new guidelines.
well, from a requirement standpoint, the district standard is to provide one for all teachers on site. However, we're trying to work within the limits of what we have. Your point about the parking garage, we'll certainly look at that. Obviously, it does have cost impact, and so when we're working with the district and school administration to figure out how to spend the available funds,
Right.
that's it may not make it to the top.
Well, no, I don't, I think we wanted to throw it out there.
Yep.
A couple other things that teachers have brought up that couldn't, be here is, and this is more like classroom or building use type things. We have a lot of nursing moms here. Are there gonna be plans to have a proper pumping room for that as the law requires?
That's definitely something to include on our notes and try to include that space either in the administration or possibly the new classroom building.
Okay, and the other thing is me personally being out there, like, one of the big complaints that me as a parent and there's not a lot of shade, on this campus. And the big trees that we have, they're not really in places where kids can go and get relief from the shade. So like, one of my solutions, because I teach outside, is, I have a metal structured building out there right now. And there's no, it's new, you guys probably didn't know about it, but like, in the site plans, like, I not only use it to teach, but a lot of other classes are starting to bring outside and bringing classes outside, and so the kids can get the fresh air and everything like that. So I think shade and some outdoor teaching area needs to be taken into.
And we do have that on our list, we'll add it again. One of the things that we want to try to do is we want to try to cover as many of the pathways as we can as well.
Right, but I already have the structure, so if you guys can just figure out where to put that structure.
So one of the things I'd like to bring up, just talking about shade, is we've got these learning court areas here. This is basically the main front entry, but you've also got this kinder court in between the kindergarten building and the two-story building, as well as probably learning court spaces in between, let's say, the multipurpose and the kinder building. Because of the orientation of these buildings, basically your son starts here and makes its way around in this direction and comes here. So you are going to have some shade from the kindergarten building, but especially in this learning court right here.
Are they all two-story buildings
This
right
is, no, the kinder is not going to be.
there? Okay,
This is going to be a higher base space.
okay.
This one's going to be 2 stories, so this learning courtyard here is going to be pretty well shaded most of the day until the sun makes its way around and is directly, but that's usually towards probably the end of the day after school.
Right.
Now, we could look at, the possibility during this stage of putting out a shade shelter someplace out here on the play fields as an area of relief for when the kids are playing out here on the field. They get hot, they can go back under, hang out under the shade shelter for a little bit, cool off, and then come back out and play. A lunch court shelter, would also provides, shade over this entire area as well.
And then, we're gonna do a shaded walkway, this will spine right
Here.
there.
So this would all be-
Budget allowed.
Budget.
Yeah, budget provided.
Yeah.
And we have covered walkway here, which you definitely will from this point right here to this building on the first floor
I
and
don't think it's
possibly on the
walkways
second.
that there's so much concern about, but just relief on recess, like, I've seen like cantilever shade structures coming off of fencing that they could do that, and I don't know how, you said this chain link all the way across the bottom there?
Yeah, some of this is, which is existing chain link, is probably gonna remain along here and wrap around.
There's
And
no
then
chain
over here.
against, that peace garden area, there's no fence. Will that be fenced in at that point?
Where at?
The
lower-
This-
Yeah, that-
Yes, there will be fenced, yeah.
That's the plan. That's the plan, is to actually level that area out.
Okay,
Because the way the terrain drops, you've got one plateau here, you've got another one here, and then another one here. So it'd be to
Right.
level this area out and make it a lower, and that's the purpose for this right here, is a accessible ramp, make this a lower play area,
right.
and then fence it in.
And we are sensitive
It is-
to your discussion about shade structures. One of the challenges that we have is if we do a shade structure that covers more than 10 kids, then we have to make it fire rated for DSA, which becomes sometimes a challenge.
Okay.
So we understand, give us a chance to take a look at it.
Yeah.
I think our primary initiative would be, as Dion indicated, is strategically configuring the roofs,
Right.
particularly on the lower buildings, to provide, to maybe slope up and provide some projected shade, and see if we can't do something along those lines as a primary initiative, and then look at other opportunities for shade.
Okay.
Can you discuss about, specifically, this area, beautiful location, close to the water, downtown, all that. We unfortunately get a failing grade when it comes to air quality and particulate matter, because of flight path, freeways, rural adjacent, and Navy adjacent. So, being a homeowner here, I can tell you that if I go ahead and hose off and clean off my front porch in a week, there's a new layer of particulate matter that comes in, and it's ongoing, and it never stops. So can you talk about ways to mitigate and improve the children's overall health, being exposed to this kind of environment daily, as far as air quality and particulate matter, water runoffs, cisterning the water, water shedding, all that kind of stuff?
Well, we can certainly talk to the issue of the water shedding issue. So there are some very stringent regulations in California that require us to capture and treat all water before it leaves the site. So in terms of treating, it's taking particulate matter out and then releasing the water at a rate that doesn't create erosion, et cetera. So from that standpoint, we'll be doing that. The fields themselves, will be, the artificial turf will have an underdrain system, so that again, when water does go through that, it'll collect, it'll go through a filtration system before it's released or allowed to go into the soil. In terms of protecting anything from direct air quality, I don't have an immediate answer for you. This is the first time it's been mentioned. We certainly will take a look at it and be ready to address it when we come back with regard to the more specific design in April. If you've got any thoughts or suggestions you might direct us towards, I'd be happy to consider almost anything. So
It's mostly going to come into the fact of air handling, dual pane windows, all that kind of stuff too.
Right.
Make sure you not only just keep the sound down, but keep the condition and the air in.
yes, well, because of the fact that we are in the flight path, definitely we're looking at potentially triple pane windows on the new buildings. The existing buildings have actually double panes or two sets of windows on them already, and then also because of California state regulations, the filtration system and low energy functions of economizers, et cetera, on mechanical systems are require them to be highly efficient. So I think that without doing anything extraordinary and conforming with California law, we're addressing a lot of those issues.
The other thing that helps to mitigate a lot of that is actually proper, not artificial greenscaping, but natural greenscaping and trees and all that, because that does help a lot.
Well, and you'll see that we've attempted to indicate on the site so that you can get a sense of where green is. Now, I realize that this green area right here tends to be artificial, and the rest green, but we're trying to maximize the amount of green that's really there. So in this design, we are looking at redoing the landscaping, coming back to low water consumption or the possibility of recycled water use at some time in the future. And then the school actually has a program of rainwater capture and harvesting, and we want to actually in these demonstration garden areas actually celebrate that a bit and actually have little big demonstration pieces that kind of show how that works, how it fits into the environment along the lines of what's already in place.
This almost ties in with what Shane was talking about, shade and sun relief is you can just add more greenscaping, just more density, and practically have an urban forest on your campus.
Yes, sir.
So we're talking roughly 2-year project, is that right? And when will you start? I missed the first part for you.
So we're looking at about 2 years before we get to construction, and then construction, because it's gonna be phased, is gonna take, probably 2 to 3 years, at least.
Probably 2.5 to 3.
Yeah.
Just something else to add to our wish list. We have learning spaces upstairs in the administration building here that have little to no windows. There's no natural light coming in, and we see a lot of kids in there, and teachers that are stuck in there all day. So I don't know, again, have no idea about cost, but if we're putting this on the wish list, somehow creating some more natural light opportunities up in that upper learning space would be really great.
I was gonna say the same for the library.
We were actually, this space becoming the library, we're looking at opportunities
Like
for,
opening
you know,
up.
probably windows on the sides and possibly skylights. So we are interested in the daylighting component, you know, from an energy standpoint as well as just livability. Yes.
As you know, traffic's a big issue in the neighborhood, and especially traffic generated by the school impacting residents. I think I understood you to say that the main drop-off for the school would be still on Ash Street.
Well, yeah, we still have a
Drop-off on-
requirement to have a pedestrian drop-off at the main entrance, particularly for when the school is in secure mode.
Right, but that you have a bus drop-off on 8th Street.
Correct, down here.
So why, we don't have, we don't have buses.
Additional car drop-off on 8th Street, because the main impact, the bottleneck is on Ash Street.
So you would have, I think, as the school operates now, and this is partially an operational issue too, I think there's drop-off, and please correct me if I'm wrong, David, but we've got drop-off on Ash Street right now. We've got drop-off on Fern, but there will be opportunity for drop-off along here.
Right.
So
If the school in the future were to have bus transportation, it would probably only be maybe 1 or 2 buses. Then the bus drop-off would probably be along A Street,
Right here.
but that would also be parent vehicle drop-off as well.
So the topography on this site actually starts to break right about here going downhill. So this kind of is the opportunity to kind of stay within that realm of semi-level starting point.
But just the distribution of pedestrian drop-off would be very important to help mitigate traffic.
And I think that our intention is to be able to make these multiple entrances usable up until the point when the school goes into secure mode. And that's the intention behind that. And then also the proximity of the entrance, particularly the kinder court, so that the little kids can be dropped off without having to be traipsing through the school. Yes.
The new 2-story building that is being built, when you remove those bungalows, the new two, are those on both sides of that building going to have exit doors in the classroom? Because currently that gray building at the top, those lower level classrooms have exit out to the courtyard.
On the grade level? On the ground floor?
On the ground floor. No,
Yeah.
on the ground floor.
Yeah.
They can exit their classrooms.
I-
Will that still be considered in that building?
Clearly, if we have the opportunity to do that, I think that's a tremendous advantage to be able to use that court. Our one challenge is gonna be is that this building is probably gonna be several feet above the top of the kinder court. So we're gonna have some sort of a ramp for the 2 kindergarten classrooms to come out the backside and down into the kinder court. Otherwise, the other side of the building would open out onto this
Okay,
learning courtyard up there.
okay.
So what you see here on this plan is this is basically a corridor between the classrooms, similar to this existing 2-story building. So you're asking whether or not these classrooms here will have the opportunity to open up onto the learning courtyard
Yes,
here.
as well as the ones down
And then
below.
these 2 kindergarten classrooms opening up onto the kinder courtyard here.
What about those other ones on that same side of the kindergarten? Like
This
those?
side,
Those will be problematic because they'll be several feet above the grade down below. And we probably don't want to introduce the older kids directly into the kinder court.
right.
But those are, it's exits at the end of each of those buildings.
Exits at the end. And
There's
so
an exit at the
the
end
doors,
here.
the doors we're talking about are really convenience connections. They aren't fire exits.
Correct. No.
Now, in the case of the case of the kindergarten classrooms, we do need to have 2 exits from each of those classrooms, so.
Because they're a larger classroom anyways. Usually kindergarten classrooms run about 1,250 square feet. So you're required to have 2 exits for a classroom that's anything over 1,000 feet.
Yes, ma'am.
So I have a question, because the new, staff parking lot is just gonna be chain link fence, it's not gonna be any decorative fencing.
Well, it's gonna be elevated up a little bit, and right now, our intention is actually put the security barrier along this side rather than the street side. What's
And all of us homeowners that live on Hill Street right now, we have this nice, garden. that
You'll be
we
looking
can
at a planted
look
embankment in this case as well.
we'll be looking at what?
Planted slope.
Embankment, so right
Yeah.
along here.
Okay, the slope is.
Yeah, so the slope,
Yeah.
the slope that's right there now will stay there.
Okay.
So the parking lot's at the same elevation that the trailers are down,
Yeah,
essentially?
it's elevated up some.
Got it.
The parking structure for the staff is going to be gated and closed when not during school time, correct?
At this moment in time, there's a couple things we have to wrestle with on that, and that is with regard to, if we have parking, we have to provide some, public parking and a path of travel for someone to park there and get into the, entrance to the school. So the reality is we probably have to have some sort of, accessible parking up in that upper end that will then connect with the sidewalk and then be able to come up and come into this entrance right up here. So we get this yin and yang in terms of, we could close off, we could secure a portion of this on this side, but we'd have to leave another portion on the outside. So it's trying to figure out how to get the most parking spaces and meet both requirements. So, that's still a work in progress.
So my suggestion to you for that, being someone who's in the neighborhood and sees what happens in the neighborhood, is to have some sort of minimal gate or some sort of way so that when the school is not in session during operational hours, that it is secure and closed off from the neighborhood, simply because there is a tendency to use any open space for people to go ahead and leave their cars permanently and long-term parking there.
Right.
So any space that you provide for the teachers is actually gonna get used by people storing their cars there.
Yeah.
There's also the neighborhood has seen better times and worse times, and during some of those worst times, people will be doing things in their cars that they shouldn't be doing, and that could potentially be a location for them to do that.
Sure, we're sensitive to that. We're gonna have to come up with a specific design for it all, and I'm sure we can look at it more closely when we come back in April. At this moment, I don't have a perfect solution. Our other challenge when we close it off is, because of that embankment, is figuring out how to put a gate in that location that actually works with the slope and the right of way. So there are some interesting design challenges for what seems like a simple thing.
So,
It can't just be a one-way that enters through Ash and out through Dale?
Well, it can be, yes, but that doesn't, in terms of securing it off where we put fences and gates, that starts to pose challenges for that design.
so I think what David is saying is that the plan currently is to basically have a fence along here, correct?
Yes.
That's the fence line?
Right, and our neighbor is suggesting that he would like to see, during off hours, he would like to see security along this side.
Right.
I mean, it just could be a pole with a chain to begin with or something, but it's.
So you're
So what we
Close that
could
off.
do, which we have done at many other schools, in fact, my daughter's school, which I live close to, has done this as well, is you do what they call an A-frame gate that closes off that driveway. It swings in, they close it at night, and then when, staff comes in the morning, the first staff that opens up the school, they open that up for.
You want to prevent cars from getting in there in off hours.
I was thinking just the opposite, because we have all this new commercial stuff, like pizza place and all the restaurants, and all the neighbors are being impacted by patrons at the restaurant. Why couldn't they use that parking lot?
Well, the challenge with that is the enforceability is if somebody leaves their car there overnight and then the school administration has to come in and get it towed out in the morning. But again, I think that we will take a look at this. We understand, I think, what's going on, and we'll talk about the specifics in April. You'll have a chance to look at a more specific design after we've had a chance to scratch our heads about it a little bit more.
I agree with Joanna, there's benefits to both sides, because on weekend nights, the streets are, all the parking spots all around the school are packed full, and people looking for parking. So it would give you.
I think that's something that we're gonna have to talk with the administration further about, on whether or not that parking lot remains open for public use on evenings and weekends. But I see the point that was brought up with regards to, I see the point that was also brought up with regards to people parking there long-term and just leaving their vehicles, because that parking area is, realistically, it's set up for staff to alleviate the parking issues within the neighborhood, you know, by the school.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine there would be clear signage that you can only park here between
Yep.
5 p.m. to 5 a.m. or whatever.
Right.
Right, so
6
people
p.m.
don't-
Friday
they
to
don't
6
take
a.m. on
it.
Monday morning or something like that. And, you know, that they would be, if the school administration decided that they wanted to allow that to happen, there would be, you know, clear information on that signage that, you know, if their vehicle's not out by 6 a.m. on Monday morning, they're subject to towing, something like that. But we all know how people are, and they could take advantage of that very easily. Other questions, input, comments from anybody?
This may not be the time or place, but I'm one of the people that's upstairs in the learning center area, the learning area upstairs in this building. And that's where we see our special education students. And I don't know if it's even going to be possible with all of this, but it would be preferential for us to be able to see our kids on the ground floor, instead of having them have to come upstairs one way or the other.
Right.
I mean, our population changes all the time, but there's times we have kids that have impairments, mobility impairments that make it a little tougher for them. So with all of the changing around and everything of the library and the moving stuff around, I don't know if it's possible to move that learning space downstairs or not, but just throwing it out there.
The learning space that's in this upper corner up here?
Yeah, it's the whole upstairs.
The whole
learning
upstairs,
center,
okay.
there's
So we got
on
kind
both
of, got basically tutoring functions on this side, and we've got kind of, group work areas and things, individual work areas over on this
Well,
side.
it's on both sides. When we,
Okay,
that's what
so you
we're
kinda
doing.
use
We're
it-
doing small groups.
You kind of
support.
just use it for a whole broad range
Yeah.
of things,
We
okay.
do our tutoring, we do our special education up there, we have our reading specialists up there.
All right, well, so this space obviously is much larger than the library currently is now, but that was one of the desires, was to expand that. There's always the possibility of maybe assigning part of that. I'm guessing that your activities are semi-quiet, and a lot of libraries are now turning into kind of innovation centers that aren't necessarily the quiet librarian libraries anymore. So we could possibly look at
Even if it's a
utilizing
smaller
some
space,
space
where we
here.
do both upstairs and
you know.
downstairs, but just so when we do have kids that,
The other possibility is when we sprinkle this building, we can actually move the library up to the second floor. Now, I don't know whether that's desirable.
Typically, you don't want to have
I know that.
libraries on a second floor.
I know that, I'm throwing that out, that it's now possible, so,
Right.
it's fine, I'm just throwing it out
okay.
there.
No, we appreciate that,
Windows and we.
because we will be looking more closely at the floor layouts, so.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Just to talk about the parking situation again, I know it's not a company, but a lot of companies, corporations, they, partner with Lyft or Uber to have their employees, driving to work. I know I was driving a big car, gas guzzler, and I lived within 5 miles. I'd take a football ride share to work. It's so cheap.
It's an idea.
Yeah.
I think that's more of an operational idea, but Randy's actually writing that down. So. Something to discuss with the administration. Yep. Any other input?
Randy, do you want to really quickly run through what it is that we've written down, so everybody can see that if their ideas gotten here?
All right, so here, I'm just gonna read it. The adjacent owner. Some of your issues were what's going to happen with the Torrey Pines, what are the planned activities for that park area, auto drop-off on Dale was one of the other items. What some of the ideas thrown out was having a 2-level parking garage. We talked about cost impact, having a nursing space on campus. Shade was talked about a lot. Outdoor teaching areas, learning courts, creating shady areas. Roof projections could create shade also. Water shedding, rainwater collection, air quality was also talked about. We're getting some dust right now. I live above 8, so I get freeway dust way up the hill. I know all about that. Again, maximizing green areas, sound issues. We talked about that it could be 2 years from today would be start construction, maybe 2 to 3 years to do all the phases. Some of the issues, about the upper learning space, there's no natural light, talking about, accessing kids down on the lower level. I wasn't really, missed a little bit of that, but, adding some windows, adding some skylights was discussed. Again, traffic was talked about, talking about, future bus drop-off. Right now, there's no buses, but if there was, it would be on A, also parent drop-off. Again, on Dale, talking about, what the residents across the street are gonna look at. There's gonna be an embankment, a lot of conversation about parking, so we're gonna really look at that and see how we can deal with that. We'll bring back some things on that. Desire to block off parking, have signs. We understand that on the weekends, this neighborhood really fills up because of the evening activities. People can leave cars in the parking place, so we would need at least some signage. This car will be towed away after this hour. That's that, and I already mentioned keeping kids on the ground floor.
Did we get everything? Is there anything we can drop?
One more comment. What kind of influence you guys have on getting stop signs put in and making a four-way stop at the end of Dale Street with crosswalks for kids and parents and stuff?
So what will happen as part of our services is that our civil engineer is going to be doing what's called a safe path to school study, and that'll encompass an area about kind of a block around the school, and will identify the need for potential things like stop signs and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
It doesn't always work its way into our plans, but sometimes it works its way into the city's plans in terms of their priorities. But that's also part of what we review with them, because when we do improvements in the streets, the curbs, gutters, sidewalks, we need to get a separate permit from the city to do that, and so that's usually part of the discussion on that.
Okay.
So that will come up as part of that process.
Yes, sir.
To his point, I've already contacted the city, they come out to a survey engineering for Ashendale, and then Beachendale. They said it doesn't qualify.
Really?
But yet, you won't answer my question, then why is there a stop sign?
Right.
Just one block.
29th and, Beach, so, great. Dale, great. 30th and great.
I know.
And Vernon, great. You said you can't have that many stop signs that close together. We're the exact same distance apart. I mean, he just,
Well, it's just dangerous
Back
for
yourself in the corner.
kids across. I mean, I live here, so it'd be nice to have it as well for
Yeah.
people left, but.
So what happens in that study is we actually do traffic measurements,
Yeah.
and we, during the different times of day, so we find out what the average daily trips are, ADTs, and then there's a little chart that goes to what the city engineer is probably looking at in terms of, does that warrant a stop sign?
I mean, how could you not, especially right out here, there's so much traffic out here in the morning. It's not good.
I will tell you this, if you contacted your council office,
Yeah, I spoke to, Ward.
yeah, the more times you kind of nudge them, they also kind of nudge the traffic engineers, so.
I've got on both ends.
And since our project won't be happening it won't start construction for 2 years, and then anything that goes with it won't be involved with that. If you're more anxious about that, I would strongly encourage that. If you could get a few of your neighbors to mention it too. The more times they check a mark of something that's been called to their attention, the more likely it is that something's gonna happen.
They might be a little relieved that you're not bugging them anymore. So,
I still can't believe there's any crosswalks on the street.
At a school.
Absolutely ridiculous.
I know, right?
I mean,
out of school.
yes, it's applied by law, but it's not, I mean, people see it being white stripe 8 feet, wide,
I've been pushing for one to go from Dale across 28th Street when all the kids go to the park.
Yeah.
And we're still talking about that. I've been pushing on forever. Actually, the Greater Wilmington Planning meeting started 15 minutes ago, so if you want to go there. You can go talk to Chris Forrest.
Talk to Tyler.
Because I gotta go there right now, I'm on the board.
Tyler, write it down.
So if there's nothing more, we really want to thank you all for coming out tonight in the rain. And we will be back in April with more development. And hopefully our intention is to show you how we've responded to each of these items, so.